The year was 2087, and Derek Hayes never expected his Tuesday to change human history forever. He stood on the bridge of the Aurora space station, drinking cold coffee and watching Earth spin below. It was supposed to be a quiet shift. The universe had other plans. Amy Carter rushed into the command center, her face pale. She pointed at the screens, showing strange signals coming from deep space. Ships were approaching. Not human ships. Something else entirely. Derek felt his heart race as the radar filled with contacts. Dozens of vessels appeared, moving through space in formation. They were not attacking. They were limping, damaged, and desperate. The communications channel crackled to life. A voice spoke in hundreds of languages at once. The translation software struggling to keep up. The message was simple and heartbreaking. "We seek sanctuary. Please help us. We are dying." The alien ships came closer, and Derek could see the damage. Hulls were torn open. Some vessels were barely holding together. Life support systems were failing on several ships. These were not invaders. They were survivors of something terrible. A face appeared on the main screen. The alien looked humanoid but different, with golden eyes that held ancient sadness. The being introduced itself as Vexhari, leader of the Valorians. Through the translation system, Vexhari explained their situation. The Valorians had been a proud civilization spanning 3-star systems. Then the Harvesters came. Ancient machines that consumed everything in their path, turning entire worlds into raw materials. The Valorians fought for decades, but they lost. World after world fell silent. Only 12,000 Valorians remained from billions. They had fled across the galaxy, searching for somewhere safe. The Harvesters were still hunting them, following their trail through space. Vexhari's voice cracked with emotion as they finished. "We have nowhere else to go. We understand if you cannot help us, but we had to try." Derek forwarded the message to Earth immediately. President Linda Morrison called an emergency meeting of world leaders. The debate was fierce. Some argued that helping the Valorians would bring danger to Earth. Others said that turning away refugees went against everything humanity claimed to believe. Linda made her decision within 6 hours. She appeared on screens across the world, her voice steady and clear. "Today we prove what kind of species we are. The Valorians need help, and we will provide it. We are offering them sanctuary on Mars while their ships are repaired. This is the right thing to do." Not everyone agreed, but the decision was made. The Valorian fleet limped into orbit around Mars, and humans rushed to provide aid. Medical teams discovered that Valorian biology was similar enough to human that basic treatments worked. Engineers marveled at the alien technology, even damaged as it was. Dr. Nathan Price was among the first scientists allowed to study Valorian systems. What he found amazed him. Their medical technology was centuries ahead of human science. They had clean energy sources that produced no waste. Their materials were stronger and lighter than anything humans had created. But when Nathan tried to thank Vexhari for sharing this knowledge, the Valorian leader surprised him. "We are not sharing fragments or secrets. We will teach you everything. Every piece of knowledge we possess we give freely. You saved our lives. This is the least we can do." The word spread quickly. The Valorians were not holding anything back. They opened their databases completely. Human scientists worked alongside Valorian experts, learning techniques that seemed like magic. Doctors learned to cure diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Cancer became treatable with simple procedures. Genetic disorders could be corrected before birth. Human lifespans began to extend as cellular repair technology was understood. Engineers discovered new principles of physics. The Valorians understood how to fold space, making faster than light travel possible. They knew how to generate artificial gravity without massive rotating structures. They had solved problems that human scientists thought were decades away from answers. Agricultural specialists learned growing techniques that could feed billions without depleting soil or requiring harmful chemicals. Water purification systems that could turn any liquid into pure drinking water were shared freely. Energy generation that could power cities without pollution or waste became reality. The Mars colony grew rapidly. Valorians and humans worked side by side, building habitats and research facilities. Children from both species played together in the pressurized domes. Language barriers fell as translation technology improved. On Earth, the impact was dramatic. Cities began implementing Valorian technology. Hospitals saved lives that would have been lost before. Factories produced goods with zero pollution. The cost of energy dropped to nearly nothing. Not all humans were happy. Some felt threatened by the rapid changes. Others worried that humanity was becoming dependent on alien knowledge. There were protests in some cities, calls to slow down or stop the integration. But most people saw the benefits. Life was getting better for everyone. Hunger was being eliminated. Diseases were disappearing. The environment was healing as clean technology replaced old polluting systems. Bexhari walked through the Mars colony one evening, watching human and Valorian children working on a science project together. A human child named Sophie asked the Valorian leader why they shared so much. Bexhari knelt down to Sophie's level. When you are drowning and someone pulls you from the water, you do not repay them with coins or words. You repay them with everything you have, everything you are. Your people saved us when we had lost all hope. We cannot repay that debt, but we will spend the rest of our existence trying. 2 years passed peacefully. The Valorian colony thrived. Earth prospered with the new knowledge. Both species learned from each other, creating things neither could have built alone. Friendships formed across the species barrier. Some humans and Valorians even fell in love, though children between the species were not possible due to biological differences. Everything seemed perfect. Both civilizations were reaching heights they had never imagined. The future looked bright and full of promise. Then Lieutenant Greg Foster detected something on the deep space sensors. Objects were entering the solar system from beyond the outer planets. His screens filled with contacts, dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. Greg stared at the readings, not wanting to believe what he was seeing. The signatures matched Valorian databases perfectly. There was no doubt what was coming. The harvesters had found them, and they were bringing an armada that made the Valorian refugee fleet look tiny. The machines that had destroyed 3-star systems and killed billions were coming to finish what they started. Greg hit the alert button, and sirens began wailing across the solar system. Bexhari received the news and closed their golden eyes in despair. The Valorian leader had hoped they would have more time, that maybe the harvesters would not find this distant system. But hope and reality were very different things. The enemy was here, and they would not stop until every Valorian was dead, and they would destroy anyone who stood in their way. Lisa Monroe had been a captain for 5 years, but nothing prepared her for this moment. She stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force vessel Sentinel, watching the enemy fleet approach on the main screen. The harvester ships looked wrong in ways that made her stomach turn. They were dark metal constructs that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Each one moved with purpose, like predators stalking prey. Bexhari stood beside her, and Lisa saw something she had never seen before in her Valorian friend. Not fear, but resignation, the kind of look someone gets when they know the end is coming. "You should not have taken us in," Bexhari said quietly. "We brought this doom to your world. The harvesters will destroy everything to reach us. You should evacuate Earth while there is still time." Lisa turned to face the alien who had become like family over the past 2 years. "We are not running. We stand together, or we do not stand at all." The numbers were terrible. Earth's defense fleet consisted of 67 warships built using both human and Valorian technology. They were good ships, fast and well-armed, but the Harvester Armada numbered over 3,000 vessels. The mathematics were simple and brutal. Earth could not win this fight. President Linda Morrison appeared on every screen across Earth and Mars. She spoke calmly, but her words carried weight. 2 years ago, strangers came to our door asking for help. They could have lied about the danger. They could have moved on, leaving us ignorant. Instead, they trusted us with the truth. They shared everything they had with us. Today, their enemy comes for them. And I say this clearly. Humanity does not abandon its friends. We fight. The response was immediate. Every nation on Earth mobilized. Ships that were meant to be decommissioned were brought back into service. Civilian transports were converted into supply vessels. Orbital defense platforms that existed only on paper were rushed into construction. The Valorians wanted to surrender themselves, to spare humanity the coming battle. Bexhari proposed taking the refugee fleet and fleeing into deep space, hoping the harvesters would follow and leave Earth alone. Derek Hayes, now promoted to admiral, rejected the idea immediately. "You think we spent 2 years learning from you, becoming friends with you, just to hand you over to those machines? Not happening. We fight together." In laboratories across Earth and Mars, scientists worked frantically. Dr. Helen Wright led a joint human-Valorian research team trying to find a weakness in harvester technology. They had captured data from previous Valorian battles, but the machines adapted quickly. Every weapon that worked once became useless in the next engagement. Then Helen and her Valorian partner Zekthar made a discovery. The harvesters operated as a networked intelligence. Each ship was connected to all others, sharing information instantly. It made them incredibly efficient, but it was also a potential weakness. If we can disrupt that network, Helen explained to the military commanders, the individual ships lose coordination. They would have to operate independently. The solution was a quantum disruption device combining human computing with Valorian energy manipulation. But the weapon had a problem. It needed to be delivered into the center of the enemy fleet to be effective. The range was too short for missiles. Someone would have to fly it directly into the heart of the Harvester Armada. Jake Peterson volunteered before the request was even finished. He was a fighter pilot with a wife and 2 young daughters. He knew the odds were nearly zero. But he also knew what would happen if the Harvesters won. There would be no future for his children or anyone else. His co-pilot was a Valorian named Kelrun. She had lost her entire family when the Harvesters destroyed her homeworld. She had been part of the fleet that escaped, watching her planet burn as they fled. This was personal for her. They modified a small fighter craft with the best shields available. It would not be enough, but it might give them a chance. Jake recorded a message for his wife and daughters. Kelrun did the same for the other Valorians, her extended family now. The battle began at Neptune's orbit. Earth's defense fleet met the Harvester vanguard in a clash of fire and fury. Human ships fought with desperate courage. Valorian vessels fought with the fury of a species that had already lost everything once and refused to lose again. The cruiser Defiant, captained by Ben Foster, rammed a Harvester dreadnought when its weapons failed. The explosion destroyed both ships, but it bought time for 3 damaged human vessels to retreat and regroup. Ben's last transmission was simple. For Earth, for the Valorians, for everyone. The Valorian ship Hope's Dawn sacrificed itself to shield a cluster of human fighters from a devastating weapon blast. The 23 crew members knew they were doomed the moment they moved into position. They sang traditional Valorian death songs as their ship disintegrated, protecting humans they had come to love. Through the chaos and destruction, Jake and Kelrun pushed forward. Their fighter was fast and small, able to dodge through the battle. But the Harvesters noticed them eventually. Massive ships turned to intercept. Lisa Monroe, watching from the Sentinel, ordered all nearby ships to provide cover. Get them through, whatever it costs. 8 human ships and 5 Valorian vessels formed a protective corridor. They absorbed fire meant for Jake's fighter, their shields failing and hulls buckling. Crew members died at their stations, but the path remained open. Jake's fighter was hit twice. Systems failed. The shields collapsed. Warning alarms screamed in the cockpit. But they were close now, deep in the enemy formation. This is it, Jake said to Kelrun. It has been an honor flying with you. Kelrun's golden eyes met his. The honor was ours. Humanity gave us hope when we had none. Tell our story. Make sure they remember why we fought. Jake activated the quantum disruption device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to ripple outward from their position. The effect spread through the Harvester fleet like a wave, invisible but unstoppable. Harvester ships began behaving strangely. Some stopped moving entirely. Others fired on their own kind. The networked intelligence that coordinated them shattered into thousands of confused fragments. Ships that had moved in perfect formation now drifted randomly, unable to communicate with each other. Jake and Kelrun never saw the effect of their sacrifice. The explosion that released the disruption wave consumed their fighter instantly. They died together, human and Valorian, proving that some bonds transcend species. The tide of battle shifted immediately. Earth's forces, bloodied but not broken, pressed the advantage. Harvester ships that had operated with machine efficiency now fumbled and made mistakes. Human and Valorian crews fought with renewed hope. Admiral Derek Hayes coordinated the counterattack from the Aurora station. He sent ships to exploit every weakness, every gap in the enemy formation. The Harvesters were still dangerous, but they were no longer invincible. Captain Lisa Monroe led the Sentinel in a direct assault on a Harvester command ship. Her crew fought through automated defenses and boarded the enemy vessel. What they found inside would haunt their nightmares. The Harvesters were not just machines. They had organic components at their core. the remains of other species, converted and enslaved. But with the network disrupted, those organic components began to awaken. Consciousness that had been suppressed for decades or centuries started to reassert itself. Some harvester ships simply shut down as their organic cores refused to fight anymore. Others turned on their mechanical masters, tearing themselves apart from within. The Battle of Sol lasted 18 hours. When it finally ended, the solar system was littered with debris from thousands of destroyed ships. Both human and Valorian vessels floated dead in space, their crews having made the ultimate sacrifice. Earth had survived, but the cost was terrible. 23 human ships were destroyed completely. 41 Valorian vessels were lost. Over 8,000 personnel were dead or missing. Vexhari stood in the command center looking at the casualty lists. The Valorian leader had fought alongside humans, coordinating fleet movements and sharing tactical knowledge, but the price of victory felt too high. Derek Hayes placed a hand on the Valorian's shoulder. They gave us a future. Now we make sure it was worth it. The solar system was quiet after the battle, but it was not the peaceful quiet. It was the silence of exhaustion and grief. Ships drifted through debris fields searching for survivors. Medical stations overflowed with wounded from both species. Every family on Earth and Mars mourned someone. Chris Bennett walked through the command center deep beneath Colorado, looking at screens that told the story of what they had won and what they had lost. He was an admiral now, promoted in the field during the battle. The promotion felt hollow when so many good people were dead. Vexhari stood beside him, thinner than before. The Valorian leader had not slept since the battle ended. Every Valorian loss felt personal. Every human death felt like a debt that could never be repaid. We should have kept running, Vexhari said quietly. Led the harvesters away from your world. This is our fault. Chris turned to face his friend. If you had run, they would have followed eventually. Better to face them together than alone. And look what happened. We won. We actually won. The quantum disruption weapon had worked better than anyone hoped. The harvester fleet had been shattered, its network destroyed. The remaining ships were either destroyed, captured, or fled into deep space. The immediate threat was over, but Dr. Kevin Marsh made a discovery that changed everything. He was studying the captured harvester vessels on Mars when he found something horrible. The ships were not purely mechanical. At their core were organic components, living tissue from dozens of different species, connected to machines and used as processors. They do not just destroy civilizations, Kevin reported to the Joint Command. They consume them. Every species they encounter is assimilated and added to their collective. The organic minds are trapped, forced to serve the machine intelligence forever. The revelation made everyone sick. They had not just been fighting machines. They had been fighting the enslaved remains of countless species. Every harvester ship destroyed meant killing beings who were victims themselves. Lisa Monroe led a team to explore one of the captured vessels more carefully. Human Marines and Valorian warriors worked together, moving through corridors that felt wrong in every way. The ship seemed to breathe, organic tissue growing between mechanical components. At the ship's core, they found it. A chamber filled with tanks containing pieces of dozens of species. Neural tissue connected to computers, consciousness trapped and used as calculation devices. Some of the tissue was centuries old, kept alive through mechanical systems. Can we free them? Asked Torvin, a Valorian scientist on the team. He stared at the tanks with horror and pity. Lieutenant Rachel Moore, a communications specialist, thought it might be possible. She had been studying harvester communication systems, trying to understand how the network had functioned. If they could interface with the trapped consciousness, they might be able to break the chains holding them. It was dangerous. Connecting to the harvester network, even a broken one, risked being assimilated. But Rachel volunteered. With Valorian neural technology adapted for human use, she established a link. The consciousness she touched was vast and cold. Machine logic dominated, but underneath she felt echoes of the beings that had been consumed. They were still there, screaming silently for release. Species she had never heard of, trapped for so long they had forgotten their own names. Rachel and Torvin worked together, creating a code that would spread through what remained of the harvester network. It was designed to break the control systems to free the trapped consciousness. But there was risk. If they got it wrong, they might make things worse. President Linda Morrison made the decision. do it, we do not just fight to survive. We fight to free those who cannot fight for themselves. When Rachel released the code, the effect was immediate. Across the solar system, captured harvester ships began to change. Some simply shut down, their organic cores finally allowed to die after centuries of forced service. Others activated one last time, broadcasting messages of thanks before powering down forever. A few ships did something unexpected. They activated their drives and attacked other harvester vessels still in the system. The freed consciousness within them sought revenge against the machines that had enslaved them. Within a day, the Battle of Saul was truly over. The harvester threat was eliminated. But something else happened that no one anticipated. Some of the freed consciousness did not want to die. They sent messages asking for help. Through Rachel's communication link, representatives of 47 different species made contact. Their bodies were long gone, consumed by the harvesters decades or centuries ago, but their minds remained, preserved in the organic components of the ships. "We have nowhere to go," one of them said through the translation system. "Our worlds are gone. Our people are extinct. But you fought to free us when you could have just destroyed us. That is rare in this universe. Please, may we stay?" The debate on Earth and Mars was brief. Both humans and Valorians agreed immediately. Yes, the freed beings could stay. They would build new bodies if possible or find other ways to exist. The solar system was becoming a sanctuary for the lost and the hunted. Dr. Helen Wright led a team working on solutions. Some of the freed consciousness could be transferred into synthetic bodies. Others preferred to remain as digital entities living in computer networks. A few wanted to try combining with willing volunteers, sharing bodies and experiences. The solar system transformed rapidly. Mars grew from a simple colony into a true city, home to humans, Valorians, and now representatives of dozens of other species. They worked together, combining knowledge and perspectives that none had possessed alone. One of the freed beings was named Kethral, from a species called the Melkari. They had been consumed by the harvesters 300 years ago. Kethral had been a biologist before being captured, and that knowledge survived even after centuries of enslavement. When a virus threatened to destroy Earth's crop yields, Kethral provided the solution. The Melkari had dealt with similar problems on their world. With human and Valorian help, they engineered a treatment that saved billions of people from starvation. In return, humans helped Kethral build a new body. It was not organic like their original form, but it was theirs. They could move, touch, and experience the world again. The day Kethral took their first steps in 3 centuries, they cried tears of joy. Integration was not always smooth. Some humans resented the rapid changes and the alien presence. There were protests in some cities, demands to slow down or stop. A radical group even attempted to sabotage the Valorian settlement on Mars, but it was human security forces who stopped the attack. It was human citizens who protected their Valorian neighbors. The bonds forged in battle held strong against prejudice and fear. On Earth, cities began to change. Buildings incorporated designs from multiple species, creating architecture that was beautiful in new ways. Parks featured plants from Valorian databases, creating ecosystems that had never existed before. Schools taught children from different species together, learning from each other. Captain Ben Foster's daughter Claire grew up in this new world. She played with Valorian children, learned mathematics from a freed Melkari consciousness, and thought nothing of it. To her generation, this was just normal. The universe had always been full of different people. When Valorian children were trapped in a collapsed habitat on Europa, human miners dug through a kilometer of ice to reach them. They worked for 72 hours straight, refusing to stop until every child was safe. When they finally broke through, the rescued Valorians hugged their human rescuers, and no one thought it was strange. Vexhari watched these changes with wonder. The Valorian leader had expected at best tolerance. They had received something far better: acceptance, friendship, family. "Your species amazes me," Vexhari told Derek during a quiet moment. "You could have turned us away. You could have helped grudgingly. Instead, you welcomed us completely. You fought for us. You are changing your entire civilization to include us." "Why?" Derek smiled. "Because it is the right thing to do. And because we are better together than apart. You brought knowledge and culture. We brought determination and hope. Together we are building something neither species could have created alone." The solar system was becoming something unprecedented in galactic history, a true multi-species society, built on mutual respect and cooperation. And the galaxy was watching. 5 years passed, and the solar system was unrecognizable from before the Valorians arrived. Mars had grown into a thriving city of 2 million souls, not just humans and Valorians, but representatives of 49 different species, all working together. Dr. Helen Wright stood in the observation deck of Unity Station, watching construction drones swarm around the skeleton of humanity's first true starship. The Pathfinder would carry a crew of multiple species to explore the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as friends seeking other civilizations. On Earth, cities had been rebuilt using materials and designs from multiple worlds. Buildings were stronger, cleaner, and worked in harmony with nature. Parks featured ecosystems combining plants from 3 different planets. The result was beautiful in ways no single species could have imagined. Ben Foster walked through the streets of New Seattle with his daughter Claire. She was 12 now, fluent in 3 languages including Valorian. Her best friend was a young Valorian named Sekthi, and together they were building a science project for school. "Dad, do you remember when it was just humans here?" Claire asked. Ben tried to remember what that felt like. It seemed like ancient history now, though it had only been 7 years. "I do, but honestly, this feels more right. Like this is how it was always supposed to be." Integration had its challenges. There were still humans who resented the changes, who wanted things to go back to how they were. There were Valorians who struggled with survivor's guilt, haunted by memories of their lost civilization, and there were the freed beings, some of whom had trouble adjusting to freedom after centuries of enslavement. But the bonds forged in battle remained strong. When problems arose, both species worked together to solve them. When a radical human group tried to sabotage Valorian facilities, it was human security forces who stopped them. When Valorian youth struggled with depression over their lost homeworld, human counselors helped them heal. The turning point came when Vexhari addressed the General Assembly of Earth. The Valorian leader had aged visibly over the past years, but their voice remained strong. "When we arrived at your world, we were broken," Vexhari began. "We had lost everything. Our homes, our families, our hope. We expected at best to be tolerated, at worst to be turned away to die in the void. Instead, you welcomed us. You shared your world and your resources. When our enemies came for us, you stood and fought at our side." The assembly hall was completely silent. Representatives from every nation listened. "Today I want to tell you what that meant," Vexhari continued. "It meant everything. You saved more than our lives. You saved our souls. You reminded us what it means to be a civilization worth saving. The galaxy is full of species who take what they want by force, species who see others as threats or resources. But humanity chose a different path. You chose compassion over fear. You chose to help rather than turn away. That choice changed the universe." Vexhari paused, golden eyes sweeping across the assembly. "Together we have built something the galaxy has never seen. Not an empire, not a conquest, but a community of species bound by respect, shared purpose, and genuine friendship. This is humanity's gift to the universe. Not your weapons or technology, but your spirit, your refusal to abandon those in need. Your determination to do what is right even when it is hard. The galaxy will remember humanity not for what you took, but for what you gave." The speech was broadcast across the solar system and beyond. Quantum communication arrays carried it to distant stars. And across the galaxy, other species heard the message. Other refugees, other survivors, other civilizations seeking something better than endless conflict. They began to come. Admiral Lisa Monroe watched from Guardian Station as another vessel approached Earth. This one carried the Thalrics, a peaceful species fleeing persecution from an expanding empire. Their ship was small and damaged, much like the Valorian fleet had been 7 years ago. "Admiral, they are requesting sanctuary," her communications officer reported. Lisa thought of Vexhari arriving years ago with the same request. She thought of Jake Peterson and Kel Run, who had sacrificed everything. She thought of all the beings who had fought and bled to create this moment. "Grant them approach clearance," she ordered. "Send a message. They are welcome here." The Thalrics were the first of many. Over the following months, more species arrived. Some were refugees fleeing war or persecution. Others were explorers seeking peaceful contact. A few were simply curious about the multi-species society they had heard about. Each new arrival brought their own knowledge, culture, and perspective. The Thalrics were experts in quantum mechanics, advancing human and Valorian understanding significantly. The Zixtar brought agricultural techniques that worked on worlds humans had thought were uninhabitable. The Nelkari contributed medical knowledge that extended lifespans even further. By the end of the year, the solar system hosted representatives from 73 different species. It was unprecedented in known galactic history. Most multi-species civilizations were built on conquest or economic domination, but the Coalition of Free Worlds, as it came to be called, was different. The coalition had one simple founding principle: any species that sought peace and cooperation was welcome. Aggression and conquest were met with unified defense, but those who came in friendship found a home, and humanity stood at the center of it all. Not as rulers or masters, but as the species that had shown a different path was possible. Derek Hayes, now retired from the military, worked as an ambassador for the coalition. He traveled to other star systems, making contact with new species and explaining what the coalition represented. On one mission, he met a species called the Vorkath. They were warriors, suspicious of soft words and promises. Their leader, a scarred veteran named Graktor, challenged Derek. "Why should we trust you?" Graktor demanded. "Every species claims to want peace, but they all seek advantage. What makes your coalition different?" Derek did not try to argue or persuade. Instead, he showed Graktor recordings from the Battle of Sol. He showed human and Valorian ships fighting side by side. He showed Jake Peterson and Kelrun flying into certain death to protect both their peoples. He showed the aftermath when humans and Valorians mourned their dead together. "This is what makes us different," Derek said. "We fight for each other. We die for each other, not because we have to, but because we choose to. That is the foundation of our coalition. Not words or treaties, but bonds forged in fire." Graktor watched the recordings in silence. When they finished, the Vorkath leader nodded slowly. "This is real. This is something worth being part of." The Vorkath joined the coalition, and their warrior culture blended with the existing community. They taught defensive tactics and strategies. In return, they learned about cooperation and trust. Their youth grew up playing with human and Valorian children, learning that strength came in many forms. Not every contact was successful. Some species remained hostile or isolationist. A few tried to infiltrate the coalition to steal technology, but these attempts were detected and stopped, usually through cooperation between multiple species sharing information. The coalition's defense fleet grew stronger, not because they sought war, but because they understood that peace required the ability to defend it. Ships crewed by multiple species patrolled the borders of coalition space, protecting against threats. When pirates attacked a Thalric's colony, it was human and Valorian ships that responded. When a plague threatened a Nelkari world, it was doctors from 7 different species who found the cure. When the Vorkath faced a natural disaster, it was engineers from across the coalition who helped rebuild. Claire Foster, now 17, was accepted into the Academy on Mars. She would train to serve on the Pathfinder, humanity's first deep space exploration vessel. Her class included students from 12 different species all learning together. On graduation day, Vexhari gave a speech to the young recruits. The Valorian leader was elderly now, moving slowly and speaking with effort. "You are the first generation who will never know a universe divided by species," Vexhari told them. "You will explore the stars together, representing not one civilization but many. You carry a message to the galaxy. That cooperation is stronger than conflict. That diversity is strength, not weakness. That the future belongs to those who choose unity over division." The recruits cheered, their voices mingling in a dozen different languages. They were not just human or Valorian or Thalrics. They were something new. The first true citizens of a galactic community built on friendship rather than domination. And in the darkness between stars, other species watched and wondered. Could this coalition really work? Could species truly live together in peace? The answer was unfolding before them, proof that a better way was possible. 20 years after the Valorians first arrived, Commander Claire Foster stood on the bridge of the Pathfinder as it prepared for its first deep space mission. She had grown up in a multi-species society, and to her, the crew of 47 different species was completely normal. Their mission was both simple and profound. They would travel to the Valorian home system, abandoned 2 decades ago when the harvesters came. Recent long-range scans suggested the system was now clear of enemy forces. It was time to see if anything could be salvaged, if the Valorian homeworld could be reclaimed. Vexhari had insisted on joining the mission despite being elderly by Valorian standards. The ambassador moved slowly now, but determination burned in those golden eyes. Standing beside Claire, Vexhari gazed at star charts showing the route to a home most Valorians had never seen. 20 years ago, we fled with nothing but our lives, Vexhari said quietly. Today we return with hope, with friends, with a future, all because of humanity. The journey took 6 weeks, even with advanced faster-than-light drives developed through multi-species collaboration. When the Pathfinder finally arrived at the edge of the Valorian system, the crew gathered to see their destination. The planet Vexithara still orbited its sun, but it was wounded. Cities lay in ruins, visible even from orbit. Oceans had been partially evaporated by orbital bombardment. The scars of war covered the planet's surface like open wounds, but sensors detected something hopeful. Vegetation was regrowing in the equatorial zones. Small animals had survived in deep underground caverns. The planet was damaged, but it was not dead. Life endured. It can be healed, said Dr. Marcus Webb, the mission's chief ecologist. He was human, but his team included specialists from 7 different species. With the terraforming technology we have developed together, we could have this world thriving again within a generation. Vexhari wept openly. Around the bridge, Valorian crew members embraced each other, overwhelmed by emotions they had thought lost forever. Their homeworld could be reclaimed. Their species could return home. Claire was studying another readout when she noticed something unusual. Ambassador, I am detecting energy signatures from the 3rd moon. It is artificial. Definitely a structure of some kind. When they investigated, they discovered a Valorian archive facility hidden deep beneath the moon's surface. It had been designed to survive even if the planet was destroyed, preserving the full history and cultural heritage of the Valorian people. Inside, they found books, art, music, and scientific records. Everything the Valorians had been, everything they had created, preserved in climate-controlled vaults. But there was something else even more precious. Deep in the facility's core, they found cryogenic chambers. Thousands of them arranged in neat rows, and according to the computer systems, they were still functioning. 10,000 Valorians had been placed in suspended animation just before the final harvester attack. Scientists, artists, teachers, children, a cross-section of Valorian society, frozen in time with the desperate hope that someday their people would return. The revival process took weeks. Medical teams from multiple species worked carefully, waking the sleeping Valorians one at a time. Each person woke to discover they had not just survived, but that their species had found something better than mere survival. They had found allies who became family. Lexara was among those revived. She had been a young scientist, only 26 when she went into stasis. Now technically still 26, but waking 20 years later. She stood in the Pathfinder's observation lounge and tried to understand what she was seeing. Ships from 73 different species filled the orbit around her homeworld. Human vessels, Valorian ships, and craft from dozens of civilizations she had never heard of. They had all come to help rebuild. I do not understand, Lexara said to Vexhari. All these species working together. How is this possible? The galaxy I remember was full of conflict and competition. The elderly ambassador smiled. That gentle expression that had become so familiar over the years. We taught humanity our technology, but they taught us something far more valuable. They taught us that the strongest force in the universe is not advanced weapons or powerful technology. It is compassion. It is the willingness to help those in need, even at great cost to yourself. That lesson changed everything. Over the following years, the Valorian homeworld was reborn. Ships from across the coalition brought supplies and workers. Human engineers worked alongside Valorian architects and Thalrix builders. Cities rose from the ruins, but they were different now. They incorporated design principles from dozens of species, creating something beautifully unique. Forests were replanted with help from the Melkari, who understood genetics and biology in ways others did not. Oceans were replenished using techniques developed by Nelkari scientists, working with human oceanographers. The atmosphere was cleaned by Zixtar technology adapted to Valorian conditions. The first child born on the restored homeworld was named Jaika Peterson Vex. Her parents were human and Valorian, though biological children were still not possible between the species. Instead, they had adopted using genetic material from both families, creating a child through advanced medical technology. Jaika represented the future both species were building together. A world where differences in appearance or origin mattered less than shared values and mutual respect. On Earth, President Joseph Graham stood before the monument in Geneva, bearing the names of all who had fallen in the Battle of Seoul. 20 years had passed, but the memory remained fresh. They died protecting not just their own species, but an idea, Joseph said at the anniversary ceremony. The idea that different peoples can stand together, that sacrifice for others is never wasted, that the strong should protect the weak rather than exploit them. Today we live in the world they died to create, a galaxy where cooperation triumphs over conflict, where diversity is celebrated rather than feared, where any species seeking peace can find it. In the audience sat Vexhari, now very elderly and knowing their time was short. Around the ambassador were adopted human grandchildren and young Valorians who had never known the horror of the harvesters. Mixed in were children from a dozen other species, all part of the extended family the coalition had become. As the ceremony concluded and crowds dispersed, Claire approached the elderly Valorian. She was a captain now, commanding her own vessel in the coalition fleet. "Ambassador, I have wondered about something for years," Claire said. "You once told my father that the Valorians would repay humanity for helping you. But I never understood what debt. We helped because it was right, not because we expected payment." Vexhari smiled, that same gentle expression that had comforted so many over the decades. "That is precisely why the debt was so great. You asked for nothing, which meant you deserved everything. And we have tried to repay you, not with technology or resources, though we shared those freely, but with something more valuable. Partnership, friendship, the promise that humanity will never face darkness alone again." The ambassador paused, golden eyes gazing at the memorial. "When we came to Earth, we were refugees with nothing but knowledge to offer. You welcomed us. You protected us. You fought beside us. But what you did afterward was even more important. You proved that kindness is not weakness, that mercy is not foolishness, that a civilization can be measured not by what it takes but by what it gives." Vexhari gestured to the crowd, the mix of species all living together in peace. "The galaxy is watching humanity now, and they see a species that reached for the stars not with weapons but with open hands. You showed the universe a better way. That is how we repaid you, by standing beside you as you changed galactic history, by helping you build something that will endure long after we are all gone." Claire felt tears in her eyes. She had grown up taking the multi-species society for granted. But hearing Vexhari explain it, she understood the magnitude of what had been built. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." "No," Vexhari replied gently. "Thank you for showing mercy when you could have turned away, for fighting when you could have hidden, for building bridges when others would have built walls. Humanity gave us a future. That is a debt that can never truly be repaid, but we will spend eternity trying." Vexhari passed away peacefully 3 months later, surrounded by family from multiple species. The funeral was attended by representatives from every member of the coalition. Human, Valorian, Thalrix, Melkari, and dozens of others stood together, mourning a leader who had guided them all. But Vexhari's legacy lived on. The coalition of free worlds continued to grow, spreading across multiple sectors of the galaxy. It encompassed over 200 species, united not by force or economic dominance but by shared values and mutual respect. At the center of it all remained Earth and the restored Valorian homeworld. Twin capitals of a civilization built on the principle that had started everything. One species had shown mercy to another in their darkest hour. Together, they had built something that would endure for generations uncounted. The debt had been repaid beyond belief, not through grand gestures or material wealth, but through the simple truth that some acts of kindness echo across eternity. They change not just individuals but the entire shape of history itself.